The bells. I forgot about the bells. It's every 15 minutes, is it?
Wish. 1, 2. One, two, three, four. One, two, three, four, five, six. One, two, three, four, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3. Get down to me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Or is it frozen? It's frozen there too, right? Oh, my OBS is frozen.
Get these ones. And put them where? Yeah. So two, split up two. There's another two over there. Cool. Yeah.
One, two, three, four, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10, 9, 8. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3. It's quite bright here. Quite bright.
Maybe someone will have them that have everything earlier. Maybe he might have them.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Is that good level out there, Jess? Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
So half any table? I don't know, yeah, would you put that down to something like that?
Brother, there's an endless road to rediscover.
So you got all your sound working?
Yeah.
What was it?
I unplugged the HDMI to USB, plugged it back in, and it was there. I tested it all yesterday.
Yeah, I've had issues with it. Sometimes when you're playing, it's sensitive.
Is that music still turned off when I'm going through?
Well, I don't know. 7. We really should have booked it.
No, yeah. Aston is apparently a different department. Took them for something. Didn't tell anyone. Like, cool, thanks. So, nah, look, it's fine. No one should be coming this way.
I'll be just there anyway, so I can just ask them to be careful. So you're in here full time, yeah?
No, well, I'm just a casual, so I'm just
And you do lock it?
2-2.
Oh, yeah.
Good. How are you?
Rebecca, hello, lads. How are you? Good. All good. We were just saying they're going to eat this stuff over so you can be sing.
Warm here?
I do recall it being hot. And then the time of war, it was freezing cold. So she's
How are you? Stand up to it. How's it going?
How you doing?
Very well, thanks. Yes, yeah.
I knew one of these.
Are you singing as well?
I will need one mic
And the lead, guitar lead, yeah.
Perfect. Excellent. Sweet. Where
Sweet.
would you like me to sit? Well, I mean,
Yeah, I
because
kind
you're
of.
doing the audio and the visual as
Yeah,
well.
so I'm trying to get you in that camera shot. So I know you're gonna burn. Sorry, but somewhere here would be perfect if you don't mind.
Yeah. And I can stand. Is that better?
It is. It's the harp.
Harp goes on the little stool.
Yeah.
So it actually
be higher.
it'll be
Up to you. I
Bum-
think
bum-
sitting, whatever. I think let's have a look. Let's have a
standing
see.
looks
Yeah.
good, but you just tell us what you want.
You took all the photographs last time, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
How are you?
The harp doesn't need power, does it?
Your part?
The harp doesn't need
No,
power.
no. Just it's got a guitar lead.
Yeah.
That plugs in, and it's got a preamp inside. So it's
Grand.
all-
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
How's that going? Is he going to fit?
You can leave it there for the event, and we've got to get out before one.
Oh, okay. The Wilson thing is after that. Yeah. Oh, cool. Awesome.
So, okay.
Where's the harp? Sort of there in the shade. So who's on the keyboard? Ah, I'm Ron. I'm playing this part. Nice to meet you. What are you playing? Oh, that's right. And she's singing it in Irish. Is that right? Cool. Heard that? Yeah. Obviously, it's normally sung in English.
Oh, you
Always in Irish. Yeah, I thought so too. Well, the year before that.
The only one that always helps me in the Irish is Tomas.
Oh yeah, Tomas, yeah. There's another guy, there's Michael. You know Michael? Yeah, he's in the he's on the board of the drug and alcohol. He's a very Irish guy, and he's an older sort of like my age. Yeah, he's very good.
I went to school with Irish.
Right.
So Irish was like the main one.
Yeah.
Those kinds of problems. So
Yeah.
we used to go on our exams in the comic Irish.
Yeah.
So it wasn't hard
funny enough, Tina learned Irish when she was little, and then she went overseas for about 5 years with the parents. Obviously, she was only a little girl. Came back and she didn't remember a thing of it.
I know it's fully through.
Not even the first
Oh, no. I know.
Completely lost it. But talking about your Irish.
Are you an Irish speaker?
I did it for me A-levels and stuff. I'm
Oh.
in school in Derry.
Yeah.
So as I'm saying, I'm doing the Ulster dialect today, so hopefully no one correct me. Okay.
Hey, Cleaner.
It's the way we do it.
I'll put your jumper in here, okay? I'll find the place for this.
Gorgeous harp.
Yeah, it is a beautiful harp. It really is a beautiful harp, yeah. It's a French harp made of carbon fiber,
Right.
but unusually for a carbon fiber harp, the soundboard is spruce. It's real wood.
It's what, sorry?
Spruce. It's a type of wood. So it's
Okay.
real wood.
then this part's the
This is
carbon
all
fiber?
carbon fiber, and almost
gorgeous.
all carbon fiber harps also have a carbon fiber soundboard. This is one of the few that doesn't.
Right.
In fact, the only one that I know that doesn't have.
Okay. Do you
so-
play as well?
No.
You don't
I'm
know.
just a schlepper.
You love
I
it?
copied it from Jackie because Jackie came back. with
Jackie
this
came
harp.
back with one of these.
Right. I haven't seen Jackie's a long
And then I
time.
thought, I like that one. So I got the same one.
Jackie was.
You teach harp, right?
Yeah,
Didn't
she was.
Hyde?
Jackie was a student of
I was going
hers.
to say, I was pretty sure she went to you for classes.
Anyway.
She's learning very quick. Oh my God.
She's great.
Yeah.
She's an amazing,
She's no,
amazing.
I always say to her, I'm like, believe in yourself, Jacqueline. She always,
Yeah.
she always
Do you
like,
know
with the
that
singing and
before-
stuff,
She's
and
an
I'm like,
amazing
come on.
performer, isn't she?
Before we
her
met
nerves
her,
are wrecked.
she had never sung in front of a microphone ever.
I know. And now every time I see her, because I just, when I met her, I thought she was great, so I just like thought like this was normal for
Yeah,
her.
no.
And then I would be like, what's wrong? Just throw one off. And she's like, you don't understand, like this is not my, I haven't done
So the
whole
song
thing.
that Clena's
You
going to
wouldn't
sing,
know them.
the song that Clena's going to sing, Clena was looking to just compose that song, and she was looking for a singer
Right.
to sing that song. And Jackie came for lessons, and she started singing the song. For
Hello.
harp lessons, started singing
Hi,
the song.
Jason. Hello, Jason. I'm Cleena. Okay, excellent. All right, so I'm trying to decide. Well, I think my thoughts are when I'm actually playing background, I'll sit with the harp, and then when I sing, I can stand with it. If you think, because that way people will see you a little bit better. What do you think? I mean, wait. But, so here is this the spot you want? So
One
What was that?
Is it hard to learn? Yeah? It's out there with the hardest instruments to learn.
And hard to tune as well. Like,
Well, not tuning is it's knowing which key you're going to be in for every
all right,
song.
so when I'm just playing, and I'm not going to have the hat on, but now I've got my own little internal
Amplifier.
gain in here, so I can put that at whatever you think I should put it.
80% or something.
So see, I put it at 12 o'clock now.
Yeah, leave it at that.
12?
We'll
Okay.
have a listen.
Okay.
Where are the PAs?
One speaker there.
Oh yeah, sure.
One speaker there.
Right.
Okay. So let me just figure out when I. So this is what I'm going to do when I.
Stand. Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Neat little system,
Yeah.
but I will need to have the
Mike.
Quite close to
stand.
this.
Ta. So I need to sort of. He's what? Whoa! Shh. That wasn't supposed to go on the mic. Hello. Hello. I thought because there was no cable on it, it's wireless, of course. Perfect. Ta, ta. Wah, wah.
This one. For the anthem? Aye. He's accompanying. Yep. No. See what they say. Testing. Yep.
Do you want some tape or anything for your chords?
I don't need the words. Thanks.
Guys, you want to get in front of the flag?
that. Now my voice is not as big as Rebecca's, so and the song starts off very, very quietly and stays quiet. I'm going to see whether Kurt might join us for some piano and the. This is the verse. Well, sorry. Stories and songs are gone, brothers and parents too. Starved bog of Mayo holds no future for me. And let me start that again. Stories and songs are gone. Do you need more harp? I can put it up here if that's helpful. Stories and songs are gone, brothers and parents too. Carved bog of Mayo holds no future for me. Tomorrow I'm 14, no longer Breed but Bridget, indentured to Australia, far from home. I carried on, though my heart is broke. I carried on because I carried on, pretending I was strong, until one day I was. A ship called Lady Peel, my language left behind. The roaring seas and hunger leaves us crying for home. Can't talk to each other as English is spoken here. Died for life and I don't know how, far from home. I carried on, though my heart is broke. I carried on because I carried on, pretending I was strong, until one day I was. Sydney town we arrived, never seen such heat. Hundreds here just like me, knowing not what comes next. Old fields all marry, fertilize the soil, grow the country's rich ideas, far from home. I carried on, though my heart is broke. I carried on because I carried on, pretending I was strong, until one day I was. D minor. I'm proud of all you here who carry on the flame. For those like me who come here with broken hearts, to educate and feed them, there's space for all to flourish and grow the country's rich ideas, far from home. We carry on, though our hearts are broke. We carry on because we carry on, pretending we are strong, until one day we are. We carry on, though our hearts are broke. We carry maybe because he's probably just figuring out the chords there. But probably if you can bring it in from Sydney town we arrived. If you just bring it in slowly from there, and you're feeling all the climax points and the bringing down, so that's fine.
I don't want to overstep my opinion here, but I think the harp on its own is
Yeah?
far better.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't mean that.
I brought him in totally at the wrong minute, wrong minute to try and build some volume and build climax.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Okay, do you do it track on your own with that? Yeah. As well?
Yeah. Do you want me to try it now on its own? Okay. Yeah. I'll try it. I'll take it from the in Sydney town we arrived. Never seen such heat. There's hundreds here just like me, knowing not what comes next. The gold fields are merry, now fertilize the soil, grow the country's rich ideas far from home. I carried on, though my heart is broke. I carried on because I carried on, pretending I was strong, until one day I was. I'm proud of all you here who carry on the flame. For those like me who come here with broken hearts, to educate and feed them, there's space for all to flourish, grow the country's rich ideas far from home. We carry on, though our hearts are broke. We carry on because we carry on, pretending we are strong, until one day we are. We carry on, though our hearts are broke. We carry on because we carry on, though our hearts, until one day we are. Until one day we are. Yeah? It's a bit scary on my own. Okay. It is hard to get that balance right. And look, if I had time to work out something really simple together, but I would.
Certainly the one thing separate to you anyway.
Yes.
That was just the last minute thing.
Now, my difficulty is that in between, I'm going to have to take the harp out of the shape, or else it's just going to get too
Right, as well.
So maybe just turn the power off.
Yeah, I'll just mute it.
Mute it and then we'll play it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Cleona. What a wonderful, wonderful Carolyn's concerto. And it's a day for a concerto, isn't it, really? It's one of those mornings when it's great to be alive and great to commemorate those that died and those that lived in there. My name is Jerry Faulkner, and I'm your MC for this morning, because this year we started a bit earlier. They got me out of bed very early. I can assure you it's nice to see Sydney City in the early morning before the traffic gets up. Just a bit of housekeeping. The loos, the men's and the ladies, are that way, just over there. Mobile phones, if you can put them on silent. And gentlemen, when we sing the anthems, both anthems, the Irish and the Australian, can you please remove your caps and hats, if anybody, for the anthem? It's a sort of a mark of respect, and I grew up with the Jesuits telling me that you take your hat off for these kind of things. Okay. Just to acknowledge country, we, the Great Irish Famine Commemoration Committee, and all assembled here acknowledge Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the traditional custodians of our land, Australia, or Australia. We acknowledge the Gadigal and the Eora Nation as the traditional custodians of this place we now call Sydney. Thank you. Also, I'd like to welcome everybody that's come from interstate and people who haven't been here before. It's a very moving event and very touching. And for those of you that have relatives from the early orphan ships, then this will be even more touching for you still. Also, we want to thank the guys on camera over here, Vez and Dennis. They're really good. They're absolutely wonderful. Vez in particular, and this is going on YouTube. This is going live around the world. So hello to everybody. And to the Irish taxman, I don't owe you any more money, I promise. Right, let's get to the timetable. I now call on the wonderful Joan Leach to sing the Australian national anthem unaccompanied. Be upstanding, please. Thank you, Joan. Joan is a descendant of the early families that arrived here, the girls who arrived here in the 1840s.
Australians, all let us rejoice, for we are young and free. With gold and soil and wealth for toil, our home is girt by sea. Our land abounds with nature's gifts of beauty rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. With joyful strains then let us sing, advance Australia fair. Beneath our radiant Southern Cross, we'll toil with hearts and hands to make this commonwealth of ours renowned through all the lands. For those who come across the sea, we've boundless plains to share. With courage let us all combine to advance Australia fair. In joyful strains then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
Thank you, Joan. Australian Idol, eat your heart out. I think, Joan, you do better this year than ever. Good on you. Now I call on Rebecca Harkin. Rebecca, I don't know what part of Ireland you come from, but Harkin is a Sligo name. Donegal, I'm one county out. And Rebecca's going to sing a verse of the Irish national anthem for us. Please take the mic. Thank you.
Sheen a thing in the fall.
sail lagoon ni scrog tree lawag na bilayer sure you've canny around the beat.
Thank you, Rebecca. Up the Glenties and all that part of Donegal. Beautiful county. If ever you haven't been, you've got to get to Donegal and allow time. Don't think you can do it in a day, because you can't. Right. Distinguished guests, I'd like to introduce Adam Lindsay, who is the CEO of Sydney Living Museum and New South Wales State Archives. And of course, they work closely with the Great Irish Famine Memorial Committee, and only for them, we wouldn't actually be here today. They allow us to use the facilities every year, and way back 22 years ago, they allowed the wall to be knocked. I mean, this was desecration, knocking a stone wall, and then allowed a glass wall to go in there. Absolutely wonderful. So welcome, Adam.
Thank you. I'm really honoured to be welcomed back to the annual ceremony for the Great Irish Famine Commemoration Committee this year. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we meet together on the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the unceded land upon which this barracks was built. It's also fitting today that we gather on the edge of an area we now call Hyde Park, a site that for thousands of years was an important place for gathering and ceremony, just as we do today. At Sydney Living Museums, we know that the past has never passed. The past is always with us, in the buildings we see around us, in the stories we tell, in the customs, and in our connections. The past is with us in this building that sheltered more than 2,000 orphan girls between 1848 and 1850 after they fled the devastating famine in their native Ireland. At Sydney Living Museums, we connect people with the past through buildings and the stories of the people who built them, lived in them, and visited them, often across many, many generations. On the side of the barracks here, we also invite people to reflect on the past and see it through different lenses. One way in which we do this is through our annual art commission, where a prominent and invited artist is here to respond to the building and its past inhabitants, through its life as a convict barracks, a female immigration depot, and then an asylum for infirm and destitute women. As an organisation, our role is not only to preserve aspects of the past, but to invite the public to learn about them and reflect on this past, including stories of people who sometimes left little material evidence of their lives. On this site, we are also fortunate enough to host the Australian Monument to the Great Irish Famine. It's incredibly powerful to have this monument in the very grounds of the building that, as the Sydney Female Immigration Depot, provided a home to those commemorated by this monument. It's also somewhat poignant that the memorial to those affected by the Great Famine sits on the site that was once the kitchen and mess hall. The Great Australian Monument to the Famine invites us to recognise the plight of young girls who travelled to Australia. But the memorial's significance actually resonates far beyond the experiences of these orphaned girls. About 85% of the immigrant women and children who stayed at the immigration depot in the 1850s and 60s were in fact famine survivors. And the memorial pays tribute to all those who perished or were forced to flee Ireland during the Great Famine. The way the monument was created is also a tribute to the resonance of the past for those in the present. It was commissioned by the then Historic Houses Trust, now known as Sydney Living Museums, and funded by the New South Wales Government, along with substantial funds raised by the Irish Australian community. These efforts were actually inspired by a call from Irish President Mary Robinson while visiting Sydney in 1995, when she called for all Irish people to remember the Irish famine and strive to alleviate poverty in the world today. So you might ask, how does the Great Australian Monument to the Great Irish Famine, a moving sculpture designed by Australian-based artists Hussein and Angela Valamanesh, commemorate, teach, and invite reflection on the experiences of those it represents? Well, a table cuts through the boundary wall, representing famine experienced on one side, and a new world, bountiful and future-driven, on the other. The single table also symbolises continuity and the link between immigrants' lives as they passed from famine in Ireland to the opportunities of the New South Wales colony. On the external side of the wall, a small bowl sits on the table. The bowl's hollow, representing a lack of food and opportunity. A loy, or potato digging spade, and a shelf holding potatoes allude to the repeated crop failures that caused the famine. On the internal, the institutional side of the wall, the table's larger in scale. There's a plate, a spoon, and a place to sit on a three-legged stool. There are books, a Bible, and a sewing basket, all examples of the improving items provided to girls while they lived here in the immigration depot. The 420 names etched into the glass panels represent the millions of people who died or were forced to emigrate due to the famine. Some of the names just fade into the glass, indicative of those girls lost to history and memory. Hossein Velamanesh passed away earlier this year. This monument now, in its way, honours him and the way his sculpture helps us remember the past. Another evocative element of the memorial is the soundscape created by Paul Carter, which is located within the courtyard's lily pilly tree. Carter, a Melbourne-based artist and writer, titled the soundscape Out of Their Feeling, in reference to the fact that as the list of the deceased increased, the living were out of their feeling, meaning that at a certain point, the amount of suffering just goes beyond speech. Carter and Hossein and Angela Velamanesh chose to locate the soundscape work in the solitary lily pilly tree because it looked very isolated and orphaned. Carter has stated that he wanted that small tree to become a pool of silence amid the clamour of the city traffic. Today, the memorial continues to inspire reflection on the generations of immigrants who left hardship, famine, persecution and war to make Australia their new home. It's an honour for the Hyde Park Barracks Museum to be host to the Australian Monument to the Great Irish Famine, and it's a privilege to be included in your annual commemorative event. Thank you very much to the Commemoration Committee for your role in keeping the past alive. To everyone here today, if you haven't yet walked in the footsteps of the young Irish women through the main barracks building, I urge you to step inside and experience just some of what they did. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam, and thank you for the contribution that you make and your committee and your employees make. And they always give us a lovely welcome, even when we came in the door, the gates this morning. It's really lovely. Now, I've got to introduce to you a personality, Claire Dunn. I call her a personality because she's from Dublin. And although there are some Galway people here today, and we'll be talking about them in a while, I have to say that the Dublin people, because they're a blend of every other county, have a personality all of their own. And Claire is an author, somewhat of a historian. She said she hated history at school and wasn't any good at it. She wasn't any good at geography either, yet her books and her new memoirs are being written, and they actually look at Ireland and the world. And she said that Irish people are like the roots of a tree. They spread right out over the world and become one big tree, a family tree of mad Irish. That's us. You know, we are a bit crazy, and people like us because we've got a bit of colour. And nobody is more colourful than the lovely Claire Dunn. Welcome. Just make sure that mic's okay for you there. You're as tall as me.
Good morning, everyone. I can't see now with the sun in my eyes, but I'll do the best I can. I actually feel a bit awed to be speaking to the precious cargo that we carry with us today. And while you're preparing a script, you don't really feel it so much. But when you sort of sit here in the actual place that is being commemorated, it suddenly rushes in. So one of the things I'd like to know, if I may, before I start myself, is just get a feeling of who's here today. How many of us today feel an echo from the past of the famine that allows us to be here 177 years after it occurred in Ireland. Would you put up your hands? Okay, thank you. How many of us here are descendants? Oh, aren't you lovely? Thank you, Ailish. I did bring this along for the rain, but it'll do very nicely for this. How many of us are orphan girls or descendants of orphan girls? Yes, thank you. A number. How many are Irish born? We're a good mix. Are there any people here who also have Aboriginal in their background as well as Irish? Ah, I can see 2 hands. Oh no, I can see more. Yes, Fáilte roimh go léir. Now I have to get hold of my glasses. When I was asked to give this talk, an immediate wave of memories of the famine's presence in my life and work rolled in. So there are personal as well as historic echoes in what I want to reverberate today. First of all, we go back to stage 1, the beginning of what happened. Ireland, a country of 8 million people, was hit by a blight in what had become a staple food for the majority, the potato. The years of the initial period was 1845 to 1850, the worst year being Black 47. Brendan Kennelly's poem, My Dark Fathers, calls it out. Everywhere a going down of light, when winds of hunger howled at every door. 1 million people starved and died. Another million fled the country, 1/4 of its population lost in 6 years. It need not have been as ghastly as it was. Colonial mismanagement, laissez-faire political ideology, and careless social policies exacerbated it, as people were denied access to other kinds of food in the country, which continued to be exported in open sight of starving people. The poem again. Such mercy as the wolf received was hers, whose dance became a rhythm in a grave. Whatever name you give it as a verdict, it was definitely a watershed of Irish history. At the height of stage 1 in 1848, 4,114 orphan girls, mostly teenagers, were given an opportunity out of workhouse destitution to migrate to Australia, then a colony of 6 years' duration with a predominantly male population. They were there to serve and propagate family in a burgeoning settlement. Meanwhile, in Ireland, a stunned nation continued to hemorrhage people and health over the following 50 years, along with language, culture, song, music, and dance. My grandmother, Christina Union, was born in the middle of that stage in 1869. Another 2 million people fled. The country's population now halved to 4.4 million in 1901. The poem. The awful grief that trampled night and day, the awful absence moping through the land, where those who loved good music ceased to sing, and Ireland became a place of unapplauding hands and broken song. W.B. Yeats called it a country of passion, tragedy, and gloom. I knew this was going to happen. By then it had bottomed out. The beginning of cultural turn at the end of the century partly came from the Irish in London and then at home. My grandmother in Dublin joined Innian and Nahéireann, Daughters of Ireland, the first women's group founded in 1903 by Maud Gonn McBride, an English woman empathetic to Ireland's plight. Its aims to combat poverty and revive Irish culture. There's an historic 1906 photograph that has appeared in at least 2 books of Maud in the center of 27 women. My grandmother at her right side, Maud's right-hand woman of family story. I begin my memoir, which I'm just editing, in that period. And now to momentous years in Irish history. Fast forwarding to the 1916 uprising, followed by the War for Independence, which ended in a truce in 1921. The British left Ireland in January 1922, having signed a treaty that gave Ireland a conditional independence still in the Commonwealth, and most importantly, having formally partitioned the country into 26 counties in the south and 6 counties of Ulster in the north. The treaty opened into a ghastly civil war whose centenary is now being commemorated till May 2023, that may help to heal the kindred versus kindred scars of history only being tackled now. My family was in all of that political. Ireland now had to learn to govern itself, achieve economic stability, and revive its language and culture. It chose to go it alone, a bumpy road, severing its last ties with the British Commonwealth in 1949. I have a dim memory of sitting on my father's shoulders as the celebratory parade cheered its way down O'Connell Street in Dublin. But emigration continued to ebb population from Ireland. In 1957, 2 to 3% of the population left a stagnant country for other places, including the Duns, to Australia. 1 father, 1 mother, 5 brothers, and 2 sisters, and me, the largest family on board ship. Emigration was sort of an expectation of growing up in Ireland in those days. In the 1960s, Ireland came up with economic policies which invited the world in on favorable terms, part of which financed cultural revival. The famine and its result didn't really sound publicly as such in all of this, till Tom Murphy's courageous play, Famine, in 1968. In the foreword, Tom pointed to a hungry, demoralized people become silent. His play confronted its audience with the famine's destructive family and community physical, heart, and spirit follow-on. The opening night's performance at the Abbey Theatre in Dublin was met with complete silence at the end. And in silence, the audience left the theatre. Too close and too hard to live with then. By 1972, when I made my first trip back to Ireland, the place was buzzing with Irish music, Clancy Brothers, Dubliners, Chieftains, and the newly formed Dublin Theatre Festival. I went as manager of Peter O'Shaughnessy's account of the restless years of Australia in its early colonial period in music and song, which played in Dublin for the first time. Incidentally, it played in a theatre which was originally the home of my uncle and aunt. It had been built on top of it. It was one of the great coincidences that I found on that visit. We were dined by Ambassador Keith Brennan, while Ireland debated joining the EEC, as it was then, a controversial issue which settled on Irish joining in a sometimes 2 steps forward, 1 back, lumpy progression forward at that time. On my second trip back, I interviewed poet and academic Professor Brendan Kennelly, whose poem I quoted early on, who introduced the famine into the conversation, saying, "Ireland is just beginning to forgive the famine. Its greatest underlying fears to be poor and hungry, which is," he said, "the famine still." I left Ireland with 30 LPs and 50 books, which followed behind me in the diplomatic bag, thanks to Sean McRaymond, cultural historian in the Department of Foreign Affairs, and I became publicly Irish. The Irish commemorate everything. 1 year, 10 years, 50 years, 100, but not the watershed of Irish history until 150 years later, when the Irish government confronted its legacy of silence and declared a 3-year commemoration from 1995 to 1998. Books, diaries, newspaper accounts, television series, film, and family memoirs poured out, reliving its truth till people declared themselves famined out. The Irish diaspora joined in with its memorials, USA, Canada, Iceland, South America, New Zealand, and Australia, whose Irish were reckoned to be 1/3 to 1/4 of the population over a period. Which brings us to Sydney and the orphan girls. In Hyde Park Barracks, where 100 of them, their names are etched in glass behind me, within the symbolic memorial by Hussein Valamanesh and his wife Angela, who were winners out of 41 serious tenders for it worldwide. There was also a soundscape echoing real-life accounts from Ireland. The unveiling was the 28th of August, 1999. What a day it was. We all attended a commemorative mass at St. Mary's Cathedral, then walked in procession to Hyde Park Barracks, where the unveiling occurred. 2,500 of us there were, including 800 descendants of the orphan girls. Tom Power and his committee that had steered it into reality over a decade. I was MC for the occasion. Our top VIPs were Governor General Sir William Deane and Ambassador Richard O'Brien. And here I'd like to interpose a personal story of the unseen cast of the day. I wanted to include some Gaelic in my introduction. Tom was asked me to translate the first few sentences of his more formal address. I sat down in my study to tackle it close to the day. Suddenly I felt my study crammed with ancestral presences. The two translations flowed out of me. I knew it was very good Irish, well beyond my level of skill. I only had to look up 2 words in dictionaries. In addition, I wrote my part of the soundscape. And when I got to the past of Irish families saying goodbye to emigrant sons and daughters in Connemara, it burst out of me in Irish and a torrent of tears. The ancestors were very present that day. President Mary McAleese's message reminded us the commemoration has allowed us to acknowledge the pain and hurt of that horrifying period, whilst at the same time leaving us to create a living, dynamic relationship with our past. We have recognized that we are neither handcuffed to history, nor should we needlessly be fugitive from it. Sir James Dean told us his Irish ancestors. Ambassador Richard O'Brien made an eloquent speech. It was very moving to see one after another of orphan girl descendants lay wreaths of remembrance. Music and song accompanied the whole day, a meaningful, poignant, historic day. And not just one day, 25 years of it. One that has reached out into the world. In 2008, the Irish government declared Cibhnacan on Gorthamore, Great Famine Commemoration, as a National Famine Memorial Day. As Irish culture became an international phenomenon, the Irish at home have reached out in empathetic support of refugees and famine issues in other countries, in greater proportion to its population than many other countries. In Sydney, the GIFCC committee have also reached out beyond Irish Australia to support refugees from other backgrounds with university scholarships and cash prizes. Is that all we need to do? Ireland is now in strong and stable alliance with the EU, with 97% home support for it. It has learned we can be Irish and European too, and still be authentic to ourselves. As the current Irish Film Festival in Sydney, which ends today, demonstrates, in an award-winning history of Irish dance internationally and at home, and also an Irish language film on Colleen Keown, The Quiet Girl, a multi-award winning film which is due to open for general release at the Palace Cinema in about 2 weeks' time. Does that complete the famine era? The population for the whole island in Ireland has just been given as 7.1 million people, with just under 2 million in Ulster's 6 counties and 5.1 million in the Republic, which is the first time it has surpassed that of 1851 since the famine. 50 to 80 million people in the world have Irish forebears, which make it one of the largest diasporas in the world. In the midst of these synchronicities of recent history and some favorable circumstance, And before I get to that, Australia now accepts itself as a multicultural society, with the Irish recognised as being 1/3 to 1/4 of its developing story at different times. Ireland has contributed at all levels of society and been acknowledged for it. Does that complete the famine cycle? Are the ancestors completely self-realised? The great psychologist and thinker of the 20th century, Carl Jung, had this to say of ancestors when he was 75, and I'm quoting from my book about him called Wounded Healer of the Soul. "It has always seemed to me," he wrote, "that I had to answer questions which fate had passed to my forefathers, and of which have not yet been answered, or as if I had to complete or perhaps continue things which previous ages had left unfinished." I would suggest that there are two issues presently shaping in Ireland and Australia that have the potential to complete or advance patterns of history through which the famine flows as parallel or effect. Amid the idiosyncrasies of recent history and some favourable circumstance, has opened a door for the Irish government to explore the possibility of reunifying Ireland, 26 counties of the Republic with 6 of northeast Ulster. In a long-term approach of 10 years or so, complex issues need to be threshed out: constitutional, identity, political, financial, social, education, historic, cultural, and religious perspectives to ensure pluralist win-win agreement to present to the public of all Ireland to vote on. It would require a referendum result convincingly larger than a simple majority to bring it safely to bear. It might possibly need a time of trial or adjustment before being finalised. Are there ways for Irish Australia to make informal links with it? Parallels to that are gathering in Australia, as the present government commits to implement Part 1 of the Uluru Statement from the Heart, recognition in the Constitution of the country's First Nations people through a voice at the table. That requires a referendum in the next 3 years, which would succeed best with a convincing majority in excess of a simple 50% majority. Later stage requests are a Makarrata Treaty, in which Australia lags behind many other countries with parallel First Nations groups. Request 3 is for a Truth and Reconciliation Commission covering the 234 years of European presence in Australia. A successful outcome could integrate Australia's recognition and acceptance of itself as 65,234 years in the making. There are remarkable parallels between Ireland's famine history of the 1800s and Australian Aboriginal catastrophic population and cultural loss, and correspondence revivals in our time. There are Aboriginal people with components in their ancestry who arrived here in the famine years. Some Irish ancestors, such as Senator Pat Dodson, the father of reconciliation, whose grandfather, Joseph Fagan, great-grandfather, Joseph Fagan, arrived from Monaghan to Victoria in 1857. These parallels constitute bridges to understanding from which to steer forward. These are issues of the heart, mind, and spirit that echo deeply into and from the futures of Ireland and Australia, out of the past and present. We can help create those futures into being. I'd like to close with a short poem called Commemoration, which came to me in meditation whilst writing the 1916 centenary script under the auspices of the Irish Consulate in Sydney. Healing the ancestors, healing ourselves is the task of remembering. Thank you. I brought with me today my book called People Under the Skin, of my time in Aboriginal Australia. And there are gift copies available on the table there. If they happen to run out, please just leave a name or some contact number or something, and there will be more available. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Claire. For a lady that didn't like history at school, well, I think we should all not like history, and then we could speak just as eloquently as Claire has done right now. Earlier on, I mentioned Galway. It's a county on the west coast of Ireland, and of course, it is definitely all about Galway. Now, don't mention Donegal or anywhere else, you know, it's Galway. And our new Consul General, Rosie Kane, they say Kane in Galway and Keane in Cork and Kerry, and it's spelled the same way, K-E-A-N-E. There are Kanes where Rosie comes from, but they're spelled K-A-N-E, and I know that family too. They're musicians and larrikins, as we call them in Australia, lovely people. But Rosie arrived here in Australia as the Consul General of Ireland about 6 months ago. 9 or 10, yes, okay, a full pregnancy. No, it's not happening, Rosie, I'm sorry. I want to say that Rosie comes from Connemara and a place called Letterfrack. She's going to tell us a bit about Letterfrack. And Rosie went to school at Kylemore Abbey. Now, if you look at pictures of Ireland, one of the photographs that comes up every time is Kylemore Abbey, which was built by a man for his wife as a honeymoon present, a man called Mitchell. And he built it beautifully out of stone, sandstone mainly, and it was burnt, destroyed in 1959, completely wrecked by fire. Nothing to do with Mitchell, the man was dead and gone at this stage. The nuns had it, the Benedictine nuns, and they had it as a boarding school. And I had friends who were in that fire that night and came out to tell the story. That's how old I am, Rosie, by the way. Rosie went to Kylemore Abbey, and she's going to come up here now and tell us all about her life and about her time in Connemara and in Ireland. Rosie Kane, welcome. Consul General of Ireland. This has got a wobble on it. I'm trying to tighten it, but it won't tighten.
Oh, that's okay.
That was a bit better. You're taller now than me.
This always happens. Yep, perfect. Nope, that's perfect.
Right, thank you.
Thanks very much, Jerry. Actually, I'm just going to put up a tiny bit. Good morning, everyone, and thanks, Jerry, for such a warm welcome and for getting my surname right. It is spelt Keane, but anyone from Galway knows that it's Kane. I don't know why that happened, but thank you very much, and it's so lovely to be with you here this morning. I'd just like to begin my remarks by acknowledging the traditional custodians of this land, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and I too would like to pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Achorja. As Ireland's Consul General to New South Wales, it is such a great honour
to be here with you this morning in this morning's commemoration of Ireland's An Gorta Mór, or the Great Hunger. At the outset, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of Dr. Marjorie O'Neill and Senator Deborah O'Neill, and I'd like to thank them for their steadfast support for the Irish community here in New South Wales. I'd also like to acknowledge and pay tribute to the work of Adam Lindsay and his team here at Sydney Living Museum for hosting the monument and for taking such care, I think everyone will agree, and celebrating the precious lives and memories of all of those that crossed the waves in the hopes of a better life in Australia, and especially the orphan girls whose names are immortalised on the memorial itself. So thank you very much, Gura Mahagat. Ladies and gentlemen, as Jerry said, I come from a village called Letterfrack. It's in Connemara on the west coast of Ireland. We often say the next stop is Boston because we're that far out on the peninsula. And it is a really beautiful, windswept land. It's the colour of heather, and it sits nestled amongst mountains and just at the cusp of the Atlantic Ocean. And looking at that idyllic landscape, and indeed when you look at images of Ireland, you know, Connemara does encapsulate it. And it's really hard, though, to imagine that the devastation that the Great Famine wrought on the area. But you can see echoes of that trauma in the hills in particular. You can see lines and lines of potato beds. They're still visible, but they're long, greened over and abandoned. I suppose looking at those ridges and the sheer number of them, they tell me two things. It speaks to me about the scale of the resilience that the people there had on the potato crop for their livelihoods and for their lives, but also the huge impact that the failure of that crop had on the area. It does seem strange, though, to say, but my village of Letterfrack as a village, it owes its very existence to the famine. While the famine had a harrowing impact across the country, the impact was particularly severe in Connacht and Munster. Moved by reports of the appalling suffering in the region and driven by their Quaker faith, an English couple, James and Mary Ellis, came to the area now known as Letterfrack to provide unconditional help and employment to the area and to the people that suffered so greatly. 170 years later, James and Mary Ellis are still remembered fondly to this day in my village of Letterfrack, and that they are, it speaks to me of the kindness and the hope that they brought to that area and that spirit that still lives on all these years later. I suppose instances of hope were a very rare thing during the famine, but we stand here today in front of one symbol of that hope. The Earl Grey girls, they came here with little but hope, but with extraordinary courage and resilience, they, along with their descendants, and I'm so delighted that there are so many here today, it's wonderful to see, but they played such a crucial role in the shape and form of the Australia that we see here today. The orphan girls formed part of a well-worn path traversed by scores of Irish people then and since. Their impact on this land cannot be quantified, but if I may be so bold as to quote the words of former President Mary McAleese, she put it so well when she said, "Out of their courage, guts and gumption was distilled the spirit of Australia." The monument behind me stands not only as a testament to their courage, guts and gumption, but it also serves as a reminder to us all that despite the passage of time, there are still those in the world who are hungry, displaced and hopeless, and that we, those who benefited from open borders and hope, we always must repay that debt. I'm so proud that the committee has continued the tradition of the Irish Famine Memorial Prizes, which to me is the embodiment of that hope and support that helped so many generations of Irish people. I owe a debt of gratitude to the many people past and present whose hard work and perseverance made it possible for us to come together at this beautiful monument to remember a difficult but defining moment for the Irish people. To this end, I want to acknowledge the tremendous contribution of the late Tom Power and the late Jack Mundy, and I'd also like to pay tribute to the late Hussein Valamanesh and his wife Angela, and to Paul Carter for their beautiful and thoughtful vision. And I also want to pay sincere thanks to the hard work of all the former committee members, and in particular some that are here today, including Dr. Trish Power, Martin Foland, and of course Perry McIntyre. But I know that there are so many more that deserve our thanks, and indeed I owe you a debt of gratitude. I'd also again like to thank Adam Lindsay and his team here. And I just would like to say that I find it so incredibly touching that this monument is located on such a historically and culturally significant site. And to me, that demonstrates the affection and connection the City of Sydney has, not just for the orphan girls, but to the many thousands of Irish people who have helped shape this city to what it is today. Finally, folks, before finishing, I want to pay tribute to Damien Ennis and his committee for all their hard work in organising today's ceremony. We had some beautiful music, we have flowers, and it's just been such a wonderful event, and I know it's not easy to organise, and my hat's off to you all. Thank you so much. It's been such a moving and respectful ceremony. Thanks indeed to Claire Dunn. Your words were just remarkable. But also I would like to thank Jerry as the MC for bringing this all together. But I suppose today, as we gather here, I think it is so beautiful and so moving, and it is really a fitting tribute and an honour to the bravery of the courage of those who left our shores all those years ago and still continue to do so. And they went on to leave such an indelible imprint on this remarkable country. So, Gura Mahagat, thank you.
Gura Mila Mahagat, Rosie, and the Benedictine nuns would be definitely proud of you. In actual fact, Jane Connolly, who was a Consul General here some years ago, well, the last one, was it? Or the one before? I think the one before that, is now heading to New Zealand as Irish ambassador to New Zealand. And I often stand here and look at Consul Generals. We've seen 3 or 4 of them actually become ambassadors out of the Sydney connection. And I'm hoping that the same happens to Rosie in the future. I don't have any political connections, though, I'm sorry. Thank you, Rosie. Now, Cliona Mullins is a lady that I've known for many years, and we've shared stories and drinks together in little country villages and towns around Australia at Irish festivals. One in particular was Gundagai, where I first met her, and I noticed she's painted her harp colour to match the blouse, I think, is it? Yes, right. And is it a lucky colour, or what's the story?
Well, I'm told that this is the original cobalt blue that was actually quite an important colour in the Irish harp, and yeah.
And does it come with the Dulux dog?
Yeah.
Right. Actually, the story about the harp, I've often mentioned this. We were in Gundagai and we had finished a gig, and the harp needed to be put away, and it was carried out to a car and thrown on the back seat with such disrespect. No wonder she had to paint it another colour. Right, Cliona's going to sing for us Courageous Girl. Is that Brendan Graham's song? No.
Well, I'll tell you a little bit about
Right.
it. Yeah.
And Cliona is a courageous girl, but she doesn't need any courage because she's not a bit shy. She's very talented. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Cliona Mullins.
Thank you. It was several years ago at this event that I was so captivated by the stories of these girls and how their stories led to the support for new refugees coming out of here. I was totally compelled to write this song called Courageous Girl. And in it, it tells the story of one girl called Breed, and she comes from Mayo, and she gets on the Lady Peel ship that arrives here, and it's her story. A few years ago, with the support of the Irish National Association, we recorded this song with the singing of Jackie McPhee, who you might remember from a few years ago. She unfortunately couldn't be with us today, so I hope you will join in the chorus for this. The chorus words go, I carried on though my heart was broke. I carried on because I carried on pretending I was strong until one day I was.
memories and songs are gone, brothers and parents too. Starved bog of Mayo calls the future. Tomorrow I'm 14, no longer Breed but Bridget, indentured to Australia, far from home. I carried on, though my heart is broke. I carried on because I carried on pretending I was strong until one day I was. A ship called Lady Peel, my language left behind. The roaring seas and hunger leaves us crying for home. Can't talk to each other as English is spoken here. I fight for life and I don't know how, far from home. I carried on, though my heart is broke. I carried on because I carried on pretending I was strong until one day I was. Sydney town we arrived, never seen such heat. There's hundreds here just like me, knowing not what comes next. In the gold fields are merry, and fertilize the soil, and grow the country's rich ideas, far from home. I carried on, though my heart is broke. I carried on because I carried on pretending I was strong until one day I was. Proud of all you hear, carry on the flame. For those like me who come here with broken hearts, to educate and feed them, there's space for all to flourish and grow the country's rich ideas, far from home. I carried on, though our hearts are broke. We carried on because we carried on pretending we were strong until one day we were. We carried on, though our hearts are broke. We carried on because we carried on pretending we were strong till one day we were. Until one day we were.
Absolutely lovely, Cleana. Well done. Fabulous. And of course, the harp, the clóiseach, is the emblem of Ireland, not shamrocks or anything else. It's the harp. And that's why you see it on Guinness bottles. That's what I was told anyway, growing up. My mother used... yes. A man with an ego, I would think. That's what I was told when I was growing up, because my mother used to make me drink Guinness at the age of 14, a bottle of stout, to try and build me up. Go on, and you're awful pale looking. But anyway, that's the story behind the harp. Now, sorry about the asides that I throw in, but it keeps the day going. We're going to do the formal part of the ceremony. The most touching part now is the laying of the wreaths. And I would like to call on the families of the orphan girls, the descendants of the orphan girls, to come forward with their wreaths. I think, Joan, you've got a wreath to present. You can lead some flowers, yes, lovely. And we've got the Irish Consul General as well. So you do it together with Joan, because Joan is one of our real supporters here every year, and it would be nice to get a photograph of the two of you presenting the wreaths to the monument here. Against the wall, actually. Very good. Now, for anybody else that we have some more of the descendants here who would like to make their way up to the wall and put the flowers there. And it's great to see so many representatives from the families. Thank you, Rosie. Thank you, Joan. Any more takers? Yes, indeed. We have one beautiful wreath coming up here from the government. Yes. We have Dr. Marjorie O'Neill, MP, and Senator Deb O'Neill. I don't know whether they're related or not. No? As O'Neills, are you related? No. There's a lot of O'Neills. They all come from Donegal. Oh, well, Cork must be an aberration somewhere. They made their way as far as Cork from Donegal and stayed. They like the Cork lilt. Thank you. Have we got any more? Any more for any more? Any more for the chalk ices, as they say? Well, then we come to another formal part of the proceedings where we have presentations from 2021 and 2022, because we're putting 2 years together because of last year's COVID, of the Irish Famine Memorial Prizes for Excellence at Western Sydney University to two recipients, Ms. Nibris Jazim and Altra Chica. Are they here? You're Chica. And have we got Nibras? Come on then. Come up and get your presentations. Who is presenting them? I'm going to call on Damien, I think, is it? No? Okay, Eva. Eva's going to do. Eva's been a stalwart with the Irish Committee here for so long and has been the backbone over the past few years, keeping everything going. Eva, would you like to take the microphone?
Thank you. Thank you very much for that moment of reflection, and it's certainly very important to remember the past, but as Claire very succinctly put it, it's also important to remember or to think about the future. And now, we have 3 programs that the Irish Famine Memorial Committee looks after. And the first one that was started was out at Mamre Homestead, and that's out at St. Mary's. And that's really for refugees who normally they were coming from Sudan and different countries in Africa. And it was just to teach them independent living skills. So we help with that. And then a few years later, Dr. Trevor McLaughlin, he was studying at Macquarie University, and he actually started up another prize. And we have actually 2 recipients from last year, and I just want to acknowledge them. And they were Suzanne Claridge, and she was the 2021 recipient. And then we have Sarah Munty, who was this year's recipient. So congratulations to Suzanne and Sarah. And now, of course, we come to the big one, which is, it was actually a scholarship that was started in Western Sydney University in 2018. That was the very first one that we gave out. And then we also gave out one in 2019. But because of COVID, that put a spanner in the works. So this is the first time we're actually awarding. It's not exactly the scholarship, it's just the certificate. And the first one is actually for the 2021, and it's for Mrs. Atra Chiki. And if you'd like to come forward, please. And if you'd like to tell us something about your journey. There goes my list of recipients. Please take the microphone.
First of all, I would like to acknowledge the place and acknowledge sorry, I'm just nervous, the Great Famine Memorial Committee, and Australia, my second home, to give me the opportunity to actually go to university, and Western Sydney University supporting me to continue my educational journey. Some background about myself, I'm from Syria, and I came here as a refugee. War started back in 2011, and yeah, so been through a lot. And when we got here, me and my parents, we got here 5 years ago, and it was the best feeling that I knew that I could live and have a future and have achievements that I can achieve in my life. Again, I would like to thank everyone, and especially Mr. Damien Damien Ennis, for making this ceremony happening today. And yeah, just.
And I believe your supervisor Ray is also
here.
Yeah. So thank you, Ray, for coming.
Thank you, Ray, for supporting me and and making. Oh, hi, Ray. Yeah, for talking to me as well and giving me the opportunity. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
And this year, of course, 2022, and we have another recipient, and it's Ms. Nibras Jasmine. So, Nibras, would you like to come forward?
Thank you.
And
you so much.
please tell us something of yourself.
So, I get nervous with public speaking. That's why I prepared something to say. Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to start by thanking Western Sydney University and everyone who has helped organizing this amazing ceremony today. I also would like to express my gratitude to the Great Irish Famine Commemoration Committee, especially Mr. Damien Ennis, who leads the Commemoration Committee, for awarding me the Great Irish Famine Memorial Prize for 2022 academic year. Deep gratitude goes to the Irish community for supporting refugee students with a prize and scholarships at Western Sydney University. This award made me feel that my existence is noticeable and what I do is appreciated. During my journey as a refugee, I've been through many challenges and uncertainties. I faced fear, grief, illnesses, and I lost my confidence in my ability to heal and thrive once again. However, I have been blessed to have a supportive family, my mother and my sister that are here with me today, especially my sister who cared for me despite her own problems and fears. I'm always so passionate about helping people who are in need. This is what made me choose to study psychology. Currently, I work with the Salvation Army. It's a place where I help refugees, asylum seekers, and migrants to find fulfilling employment and to get their basic needs met, such as advocating on their behalf to get their food and medication. I want to thank the Deakin Create and the Crescent Foundation for supporting me as a refugee student to reach my potential and find an employment where I can help the most disadvantaged people in our community. A special thank for Vanessa, she's here with us today, who was my mentor during the program of Deakin Create and has continued to support me even after the completion of the program. Congratulations to everyone here, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And I'll call on Damien, and Damien will close proceedings. Thank you, everyone. Goromila Maraka Maragut.
There we go. For those of us in the group that know me, I'll be uncharacteristically brief. I'd like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, on whose land we never ceded, on which we are here today. I'm a person of numbers, so when I got involved in this group, I tended to steer towards that. So for me, when I started learning about the famine in more depth than we picked up in school, for me it was about the Irish famine, 1845 to 1850, the Earl Grey scheme obviously in particular, which started, first ship arrived in October 1848, and the last ship arrived July 1850. There was 4,114 Irish orphans who came to Australia. Orphans were someone who'd lost at least one parent to the famine between the ages of 14 and 18. 20 ships arrived over a period of almost 2 years, and there's 420 names etched into the wall behind me. Just in brief, to talk about their journey, because obviously events like this are about the people who arrived. Typically, they arrived after 180 days at sea on the western side of what was then known as Semicircular Quay, named after its shape. They walked past the recently completed Customs House, the recently completed Susanna Place, another property owned by Civil Living Museums, built by Irish immigrants. They walked up these streets to Hyde Park Barracks, which sits behind us, a building of many uses over the years, but obviously for us a pretty significant one. For those who've been in there and see all the hammocks hanging up side by side, it must have been a very interesting journey for those who got here under some of the worst circumstances. I'd like to acknowledge the scholarship winners today, both present and away, for their huge effort. To put it in context, we sponsor people who, typically in Western Sydney University, they come from an actual refugee background themselves. And in Macquarie University, they tend to be people who study about the famine and how we can past and present, how we can prevent them, how we can understand them more. I'd like to acknowledge everyone on the committee. This is a group effort. I'd like to thank Aaron Heavey, Breda Drumgool, Ian Leach, Joan Leach, Paula Cobain, Caroline Miller, and Ava Moffat, who was just here. I'd like to encourage you to visit as many of Sydney Living Museum's properties as possible. They're an amazing resource, and the more we use them, the more likely they are to stick around. So I give them my absolute support. And I'd like to leave it on a comment that I heard once that I think is particularly poignant for this group in particular, which was, there's a saying that you die twice. The first time is the time you leave this planet, and the second time is the last time when someone speaks your name. And I think with our support here, the 4,114 will never die in that respect. Thank you for your presence here today. It's nice that we got good weather for it, uncharacteristically Irish. We're going to head down to PJ O'Brien's, which will be familiar to some of you. They'll open at 1 o'clock, but they're going to put some tea and sandwiches and stuff on, just so we can all kind of gather and have a chat. That's my formal event done for the day. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Damien. And everybody is invited, 2 invitations. One to go down to O'Brien's, but also to go into the actual barracks themselves and see the museum and all the artifacts and the conditions that people had in there, the girls in particular. Also, Vez, a good County Laois man from, not Abbey Leaks, Rathdowney. Vez puts together all our film work, and this will be up on, I presume, Facebook and all the other social media sites that we can have a look at the whole event, and we can send it to our friends overseas and tell them that we don't just go to football matches. We do things that are serious and that are important, such as the Great Irish Famine Commemoration Committee celebration every year, except for the last year and a half or 2 years. Okay, ordinarily we go over the back here and have a few cups of tea and that stuff with the harp on it. You know that Gwyn, that stuff? Well, O'Brien's are going to put that on today. Unfortunately, I can't get down there. I've got an issue that's come up at home, quite an important one, and I've got to be there. It's 3 hours drive west. So, gotta meet a mahagul Galer, agus slám a walya. Thank you.
Pale blue and white, like a rose at noon and a drink at night. Gold embroidered things, and not even the moon could take. Skin to skin, you will see. Oh, but you're still laughing at my youth, like the sun, like the sunlight, like the sun, like the sunlight, like the only thing that's right, like the only thing that's right, like the only thing that's right in my life. Navy silver silks, when the stars fell onto the bed, just tell them what's the use. Boy, if there's no you and I, it's when it's rest above my head. Well, that's what brings me back to you, like the sun, like the sunlight, like the sun, the sunlight, like the only thing that's right, like the only thing that's right, like the only thing that's right in my life, like the sunlight, like the only thing that's right in my life, like the sunlight, the sun.